In this week's guitar lesson, I'm going to be telling you the biggest mistakes I made as a professional guitarist when I was learning guitar. Now, a little bit of a backstory for me is I started learning guitar in approximately 2007. We are in 2023 now, so I've essentially been playing guitar for almost 16 years, and for the last 2 to 3 years I have been a professional musician slash guitarist. So we're going to get into the first mistake that I made learning guitar, and this is a quite easy one that I don't need to tell you, I can show you, and it is this. So the mistake here is not learning guitar standing up. So it is very, very common that we usually learn guitar when we're sat down. Now the reason for that is, one, it's just comfy. If we're doing it stood up all the time, our legs will start to ache, start to get tired, etc, etc. And normally we're also going to be in front of a computer or tablet to maybe watch a lesson or read some music, so naturally it makes sense to sit down. And when we're sitting down, our guitar is nice and stable. We've got a really good eye line, we're quite close to the guitar, so we can see the strings and we can see the frets as well. We can kind of see everything on the guitar. When you get into an environment where you need to stand up, so for example, if you're jamming with other musicians, you're joining a band, you're playing a gig, then kind of the guitar playing slash guitar learning completely changes, because when you're stood up, the angle is changing. So we then have to use a guitar strap. So one similar like this. So I hold my guitar fairly in the middle and a little bit higher because I just find that a little bit more comfortable. But those kind of pop punkers out there, those rockers that want to have their guitar lower, their guitar will essentially be all the way down here. And what that does is it changes what we're used to when we're stood down. So some of the things I mentioned earlier and that were close to the guitar, if your guitar's down here, then your eyesight is further away. So automatically that's just going to slightly put you off, and it's going to adjust how you play guitar. So this can be a real problem if you get into playing live gigs and with a band. You don't want to really mess things up essentially, and if you're not used to standing up and then just go straight into standing up, maybe in a rehearsal or a gig, and you don't quite adjust to all the changes, then obviously the mistakes may start to creep in. You may just feel a little bit nervous, which is not really what you want when you're playing live. Certainly at the beginning as well, when you're kind of learning guitar but you're also playing live at the same time too. That leads us on to mistake number 2 that I made, and that is not joining a band sooner. So for me, it took about 10 years from starting to learn guitar to joining a band. Now, as I look back on that, I personally think I was actually ready before those 10 years. And the reason why I didn't join a band is really, number one, I think this will be a lot of people's, is the confidence of being ready. I always pull it off. I was like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not good enough. But really, after maybe 2, 3, 4 years, I was probably good enough and I could get into a band and start playing live. But there's always that self-doubt and confidence, and so that meant I just kept putting it off. But then I saw a Facebook ad looking for a guitarist. I decided to go for it, and it's been great fun ever since. I wish I had done that earlier. One of the downsides of waiting that long period of time, there's the financial aspect. So if you're playing covers, then you could earn money each weekend. Obviously, for a long period when I was learning guitar, I wasn't earning any money because I wasn't in the band. So I kind of lost out financially on that. The second thing is your musicianship. Playing on your own and learning on your own is great, but new skills come into play when you are playing with other musicians. Maybe if you're playing a power chord progression, being able to really lock in makes that sound tighter, and it makes you sound like a better musician basically than if you weren't really locked in. You may be slightly early or slightly late. And that also leads on to the kind of stagecraft and performance. So naturally, a lot of people, when they start playing live, they're quite nervous. You'll get a lot of guitar players that will just look down at their fretboard with whatever they are playing. Now that's quite comforting for us, but in the perspective of the audience, that may look a little bit dull if you're just looking down at your neck. So the third mistake is a little bit more technique based, and it is the importance of the thumb. Now when we learn guitar, a lot of emphasis is on these fingers, and really correctly so, because these fingers are the ones that are going to form the chords, they're going to play the scales, and they're going to kind of do most of the work on guitar. So I think the importance of the thumb is something that's quite understated learning guitar. There'll be a lot of information about your right hand, about your left hand, the fingers, but not so much the thumb. Now, for me, the thumb, it is very adjustable to what I am playing. So if I'm maybe playing an E chord, my thumb will be over the top of the guitar, it's just comfy. And for this E chord, it doesn't really need to do much, that thumb. The adjustable nature of it is maybe if I'm going through a scale or a guitar solo, I actually drop my thumb down. So I don't keep my thumb over the top like this. So I'm just going to do it in a little bit of an exaggeration. And the reason for this is I found that when I drop my thumb, my fingers essentially become stretchier, okay? If I was to try and stretch from 7 to 9 on the A string with my thumb on the top, I can't do it. My fingers just cannot stretch out. At most I might get to 7, maybe a little bit on 8. If I drop that thumb down, so the thumb's disappearing now, it means I can stretch out and I can essentially go from 5 to 9 quite comfortably, maybe get over to 10, but that means my wrist starts to kind of hurt, which obviously we don't want. When I'm playing guitar solos or solos, that thumb generally gets down a little bit. It doesn't really go over the top. But with that being said, if we are bending, then my thumb comes over the top just to provide a little bit more support for our fingers on the bend. Because what happens if I kept that thumb down and try and go for the bend, I can already feel that it's my fingers doing a bend, which is what we don't want when we're doing bends. It's kind of all in the wrist, but it's very difficult to do that with your thumb drop. You start to use the fingers, which we don't want. So the last mistake I made learning guitar is quite a controversial one, considering the people that may watch this video. It is now self-teaching is something that is so personal to each person depending on how they learn. There are people where self-teaching works for them. They can set goals, they can set things to do, they'll do it. There was also people, really like myself, back in the early days where that didn't work. I needed someone to say, you need to practice this by next week and then you need to perform this, or we're going to learn this for the next few weeks, etc. Now, it's a mistake because what happened is for the first maybe 3 or 4 years of learning guitar, I had a teacher. I worked out very quickly that I needed a teacher. So I had a teacher and that went really well, and a lot of what he taught me is kind of the basis of how I play guitar now. He stopped doing guitar lessons, and so I thought, I've been playing for 3, 4, 5 years now. I can self-teach. I'm past the basics. I can play bar chords. And I got into that habit, and a lot of people that are watching this video will know this habit of just picking up the guitar and I'd maybe learn a song I wanted to learn by my favourite band or whatever. Or I'd noodle. And what that actually means is we're not really practicing efficiently. There's no real direction, no real goals. And looking back on this, I think I probably should have just looked for another teacher rather than trying to self-learn. It just didn't work for me. But like I said, it can work for people. So I'm not saying this is the mistake that everyone makes. It works for people, especially if they don't maybe have the money for a guitar teacher. You just got to be really careful and quite motivated and in some ways quite organised, quite prepared on what you're learning and where you want to get to and how to get there. I self-taught for a little bit and then realised again it wasn't really for me. Started guitar lessons again for maybe about a year and a half, and again I got that structured feeling to my guitar playing and I felt like I was improving lots and lots. So if we go back a little bit in this video to when I mentioned about the thumb being over the top and coming back down for the scale, that actually came further on. So in my second guitar teacher, he said, why have you got your thumb over the top? Try dropping it down and things will be more comfortable and essentially quicker. And that's essentially where that came from. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. If any of this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, click the subscribe and the bell. That way you'll be notified each week when I upload a guitar lesson.